Hi everyone. In this video I'm going to explain how to build muscle. So building muscle is actually pretty simple. All you need to do is lift weights to provide a stimulus for your muscles to grow and eat enough protein. However, lifting weights is a part of the equation of building muscle. In order to actually build them you need bricks, and these bricks are the amino acids that you get from consuming protein. So, when you train you're telling your muscle that they need to grow as a response from training. And by eating protein you're providing your body the materials it needs to build them. But, in reality just lift weight it's probably not quite good enough to get really solid results. For example, if you're lifting the exact same weight for the exact same reps you will grow your muscle for some time, and then growth will stop. Because your body got adapted to that intensity and volume, and it doesn't have the necessity to grow more muscle. While lifting weights you need also to emphasize progressive overload, which is defined as a gradual increase on the muscles during weight training. To make it simple, we can think of it as just increasing some training parameters over time. So from workout to workout you want to add a little bit of weight, add an extra rep using the same weight. You can add an extra set. There are many different ways to implement progressive overload into your workout. For example, let's say you're trying to grow your biceps. Rather than doing 3 sets of 10 reps with the same weight week after week and month after month, it'd be much more effective to do 3 sets of 10 reps in week 1. 3 sets of 11 the next week, and 3 sets of 12 on week 3. And then in week 4 you can go back to 10 reps again, but this time you add a little more weight. However, as you get more advanced you won't be able to increase the weight or reps each and every time. Therefore you have to think to something else. Now you might want to add an extra set with the same reps and the same weight, or you can increase time under tension by going slowly when performing the exercise, even maybe adding a pause, or add some intensity technique, such as a drop set, or going to failure. Also on the nutrition side we can do quite a bit better than just saying eat protein. To be more specific, the latest research shows that landing between 1.6 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day, so about 0.7 to 1 gram per pound, is a good target for maximizing muscle gain. If you want to make it simple, just aim to eat 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight or 2 gram per kilogram. However, if you're overweight or obese you can aim to eat 1 gram of protein per centimeter of height. It will be sufficient to still build muscle. Also, while there is some evidence to suggest that spacing your protein across 3 to 5 meals throughout the day might be more ideal to optimize muscle protein synthesis, as long as you hit your daily protein intake you will build muscle. So if you like intermittent fasting, there's no problem. Just eat your protein. Now, let's enter the details about training. How hard should you push in the gym to get the most benefits from your training session? As I said, we need to focus on progressive overload. But what are the practical recommendations to do that? Now, first we need to take a look at what research says about the so-called acute training variables factors like effort, volume, intensity, exercise selection, and frequency. So, effort is the most fundamental variable. Because if you don't train hard you won't grow. So stop half-assing in the gym if you want to grow, and start pushing harder. So, while more advanced trainers will probably need to go to failure most of the time to ensure proper stimulus, the mainstream scientific consensus is that it isn't necessary to take sets all the way to failure, but you do need to be pretty close. You should finish your sets by leaving no more than 2 or 3 reps in the tank for most of your sets. Next is volume, which is the amount of work you do. Volume was calculated as the number of sets times the number of reps times the amount of load. But more recently we only refer to volume as simply the number of hard sets you do. Latest researches have proven that more volume leading to more growth up to a point, past which further increases don't do anything extra, and then, at a certain point, adding more volume seems to be counterproductive. The sweet spot for volume is to do 10 to 20 working sets per muscle group, so you don't count warming up sets. So, you want to figure out what is best for you. My suggestion will be to start using 10 sets, and if you plateau, you can add more sets. Bigger muscle groups, like legs and backs, can tolerate a higher volume, so if you want to you can use more sets for those body parts. To cover intensity, which despite its popular conflation with effort, technically refers to how heavy the weight is. You can either lift heavy weights for low reps or light weights for high reps. But what's the best for muscle growth? There's no differences for hypertrophy as long as you're taking sets sufficiently close to failure. Although, if you want to focus more on strength you should use higher loads with less reps. For reps, never go beyond 30 reps per sets. because it has been showed that too high reps don't provide enough stimulus while causing too much systemic fatigue. If you use lower rep range with high loads, make sure to use proper form to avoid getting injured. So, especially for novice and intermediate, use lower loads and higher reps and focus on proper form and time under tension and maximize muscle growth. Regarding exercise selection, the most important thing is to make sure to include compound movements like bench press, squat, and deadlift in order to work more muscle groups simultaneously and get more hypertrophy and strength. You want to include some isolation exercise to train your weakest body parts, so you get a balanced development. Also, if you have hard times with some movements, due to your individual anatomy and biomechanic, it's up to switch exercises and use some variations to perform exercises at the best of your possibilities. When it comes to frequency, the latest research actually shows that frequency in and of itself likely plays a relatively minor role in muscle growth, and the latest studies show similar results between hitting a body part once a week and 3+ times per week. However, I still generally recommend hitting a muscle at least twice a week. You can use a push, pull, split, or a full body split, because they allow for more volume per week and higher quality volumes per workout, still as long as you've got all the other variables in place. Also, it's important to proper recover from workout to workout, otherwise you risk overtraining and get injured. So, make sure to get enough sleep and don't overdo with training. So, with progressive overload and the main acute training variables in mind, at this point I'd like to get a bit more specific and take a closer look at what's actually driving muscle growth. In 2010, Dr. Schoenfeld published a landmark paper that introduced the three-factor model of muscle hypertrophy. This model proposed that there are three main things driving muscle growth: mechanical tension, muscle damage, and metabolic stress. The short version is that mechanical tension is the type of force that tries to stretch a muscle fiber. Muscle damage is basically exactly what it sounds like: physical damage to the muscle like micro tears and other cellular disruptions. Now, some believe that this type of damage is at least partly responsible for the delayed onset muscle soreness that you can feel in the days following training. For many years, many people have just assumed that getting sore should be the goal of training, since soreness comes from muscle damage and muscle damage causes muscle growth. But the latest science shows that that first claim is questionable and the second claim is most likely not true. In fact, a lot of muscle damage wouldn't do anything good for muscle growth. Case in point, a review paper pointed out that damage would seem to decrease muscle growth. The study argued that damage doesn't even correlate with hypertrophy over the long run, as shown in the figure here. Early on in a training program, you see a huge amount of damage. This could be why you get so sore when starting a new routine, and while there is an associated early spike in muscle protein synthesis, the vast majority of that synthesis is directed toward repairing damaged muscle tissue rather than building new muscle tissue. And it's only after that damage decreases that muscle protein synthesis is directed toward new muscle hypertrophy. However, I want to point out that the full mechanism of muscle damage is still not so clear, so a theory using muscle damage to explain muscle growth is speculative at best. What about metabolic stress? Well, metabolic stress refers to the accumulation of metabolites like lactate and hydrogen ions and the muscle hypoxia that often follows weight training, and it's often associated with the massive pumps that you get from high-rep workouts when you feel like your muscles are going to tear up your skin. Well, while the pump does feel good and certainly can make training more enjoyable and perhaps even provide some feedback that you're actually hitting the muscle that you're trying to target, it most likely isn't driving hypertrophy. In the end, the really driver of muscle growth seems to be muscle tension. Therefore, it should be the primary goal of our training to maximize tension above anything else. So, how do we do that? The practical application is actually quite simple. We need to apply progressive tension to the muscle itself. This means we need to lift with good consistent technique, while using the acute training variables and progressive overload to push the level of time under tension over time, also paying attention to things like mind-muscle connection. Okay, so we know that mechanical tension is the main thing driving muscle growth. But what happens next? How do we get from a mechanical stimulus like tension to a biochemical signal that commands the muscle to grow? With muscle growth, there isn't just one pathway with one outcome, but rather many different interconnected pathways with many different downstream effects. So with that in mind, let's start at the top. We lift a weight heavy, one enough heavy, that creates active mechanical tension, which is called the stimulus. This stimulus seems to be transferred from the mechanosensories that are in the muscles to a molecule called mTOR, which is a major regulator of cellular growth in general, not just in muscle tissue. The signal from mTOR goes to the nucleus and tells the DNA to produce a messenger RNA strand, which is the blueprint for building new muscle. This RNA is sent to the ribosome, which is like a factory that is in charge of manufacturing a string of amino acid based on the blueprint from the RNA. This process is called translation, and this is what we usually call muscle protein synthesis. Now through this translation process, many different proteins will be synthesized, some of which will be the big contractile proteins that make us more jacked. Others will be more ribosomal proteins or mTOR proteins themselves, so anabolic growth potential remains high in the future. Now, if this rate of synthesis exceeds the rate of breakdown, protein balance is said to be positive, and in that case new contractile proteins are incorporated into muscle fibers, resulting in what's called myofibrillar hypertrophy, leading to increased muscle size. There's also this other path that's triggered by amino acids in the protein weed. In this case, amino acids are transported inside the cell, and the amino acid leucine also activates mTOR. We know that for mTOR activation we need 3 grams of leucine, which are contained in 20-25 grams of high-quality protein, such as meat. However, it's important to realize that the stimulative impact of leucine is much shorter than the stimulative impact of weight training, and so for maximum mTOR stimulation you need both training and leucine, with leucine essentially complementing the stimulative effects of weightlifting. Then the essential amino acids get transported into the ribosome, where they are used as the fundamental building blocks for creating new muscle. Another pathway that I'll briefly mention is that of testosterone. Now, even though modifying testosterone within the natural range plays a relatively minor role in muscle growth, when you inject high-dose testosterone, the hormone crosses the muscle cell membrane and either binds to an androgen receptor directly or is converted to DHT, which then binds to the androgen receptor, and then that complex enters the nucleus and tells the DNA to start cranking out more blueprints, turning up that muscle protein synthesis process even more. If you want to know more about diet and nutrition and why 95% of diets fail, check my nutrition book. I'll give you all the info you need to lose weight and keep it off for good. Hope you like the video. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, like, and share it with your friends. See you on the next one.